Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to talk a little bit more about Strata Documents, specifically the depreciation report, what we can tell by this report, and how we can tell whether a strata is well run or not based on it. If this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hassan. I'm a real estate agent in the Vancouver area, and I make educational real estate content to help you in your real estate journey. I also make content to help you make your move in and around Vancouver. So if that sounds interesting to you and you want to talk one-on-one about your situation, you can book me in the Calendly link below, but subscribe to this channel regardless so you don't miss a future video. So one of the things that you will do when you are purchasing into a strata building is you will review the strata documents. Now previously I had done a more extensive video on strata documents one-on-one where I went over each individual strata document in general detail. I'm going to link to it here, but on a very basic level. In today's video, what I want to talk about is the depreciation report. And the reason I want to bring this up is it's come up a couple times with separate clients in the last 2 weeks in terms of buildings that haven't gotten a depreciation report ever, and also buildings that haven't had one renewed for quite some time. Now to start off, a depreciation report, essentially what it is, when we look at real estate, we're looking at a condo building or a townhome, whatever it might be. We know that over the long term, land appreciates in value, but the building itself, like any other asset, a car, for example, it will depreciate over time. Wear and tear, general maintenance, the shelf life of certain elements of a building, obviously that's going to go down over time. So a depreciation report, how it works in BC is strata corporations are mandated to have a renewed depreciation report every 3 years. Now what happens is, by way of a 3/4 vote, strata corporations can actually vote to not renew this depreciation report. And the depreciation report is like a report card of the entire building where they will go through every element, the piping, the roof, the external cladding, the elevators. Every single component of the building is assessed by engineering company, and they basically will give a remaining shelf life of all of the portions of the building, and they'll also give different funding scenarios on how a strata can be prepared to best maintain this in terms from a financial capability perspective. So oftentimes a building will choose to defer and not renew their depreciation report every 3 years. And this is not always the sign of a building that is not well run or making poor decisions. Often the right decision is to not renew this report. Now keep in mind, this report, it's not like getting a small little home inspection done. You have engineering consultants doing this report. They can charge anywhere from $10,000, $15,000 and higher for this type of a report. So for some stratas, it doesn't make sense to renew this every 3 years. Now, when we look at building components, if you've had a depreciation report done, in many instances, things are not likely to change extremely significantly between 1 and 3 years. There's not so much that could impact the building. Now, if something did impact the building, for example, some sort of weather issue, if there was something significant that happened to the building or some sort of flood, etc., then yes, you would want to renew that depreciation report. But for a lot of stratas, it doesn't make sense to renew it every 3 years. So they'll have a vote saying, do we want to kick this forward and vote on it next year at the AGM? And more often than not, the majority of the strata owners are like, yes, let's not spend the money. We'll do a depreciation report later. So I mentioned off the top of the video, this has come up a couple times with clients. The first, I had a client reach out to me with a very low priced entry level condo. They said they wanted to take a look at it. And before we go out to view condos or properties, I always do, I would say, a light level of due diligence. Enough due diligence to make sure whether this is a worthy option for us to go out and take a look. And in that due diligence process, I discovered that this was a 50-year-old building that has never had a depreciation report. Now, that to me is a red flag. That is much too long of a period of time to never have a depreciation report. The risk with something like that is lenders are not keen on lending on buildings where they don't truly know the asset. And if you don't have a depreciation report ever, that's not a good look for a lender, but more so from your own personal risk perspective. You have nothing to base things on. You can obviously have a home inspector come in, they can inspect the unit, and oftentimes they will get access to the common areas, the roof, the piping, but they're not engineers. It's never to the extent of what a depreciation report can provide for you. So in this case, for my client, first time buyer, risk averse, I suggested we don't look at that property, we look for something else. So that to me is a red flag. Looking at another building right now that hasn't had one done in 10 years. And for me, I've seen this happen before. This was something that happened in my old building. And oftentimes you'll see this delay in getting depreciation reports done for a couple of reasons. One, if a building has not had too much significant work done on it since the last depreciation report, a lot of stratas will say we're not going to update it now because not much will have changed. And in fact, we're going to wait until we do things like the roof, the repiping, the balconies, whatever it might be. We're going to wait until we do that, and then we'll update our depreciation report, because then that depreciation report becomes a different type of an asset. It starts to really show off the building, saying, look what we've done and look at the shelf life. Now, one of the ways to really understand a building's direction by way of the depreciation report is to take a look at what type of owners are in that building itself. So you can find buildings that are predominantly investor held. There's a lot of tenants in the building. You can find that out by looking at a Form B. Previously, we had rental restrictions. So many of the buildings that had these rental restrictions, you know that they are more owner occupied, and the way they treat the depreciation report is going to be different. I find that more owner occupied properties, they're more proactive in general with getting the updated report, whereas with investors, especially rental investors, if things are chugging along and they're getting their rental investment out of it, they may be a little less proactive about not just depreciation report, but also maintaining certain elements that aren't affecting their rent. That's why I always tell clients, when you're buying real estate, you really do want to define your goal with a property, because for most people, you're probably buying a strata property to begin with. Secondly, when you buy a strata property, you're buying into a collective. And what I mean by that is you're buying into making decisions with a group of people. Now, if that group of people are 80% investors and you're someone that wants to be extremely proactive with things like small things, for example, if the common area carpet is not up to snuff, things like that, an investor is very unlikely to want to spend money on that. Where on the flip side, if it's more owner occupied of a building, more of that stuff will get taken care of in a timely fashion. So circling back to depreciation reports, one of the best parts about the depreciation report, and I mentioned it earlier, is the funding scenarios. It's going to give guidance in terms of how you can be best prepared for maintenance items. Now, they'll give 3 different models for the most part. One will be kind of a model if you had a lower strata fee, in which case you can expect larger special levies in the future. And then it'll make its way to an aggressive model where you have a much larger strata fee, so you're paying more upfront, but that special levy component later on will be less. Again, the whole investor homeowner scenario, investor more likely to kick that cost down the road. If it has to happen, it will happen when it has to happen. Whereas the homeowner, the person that's looking at that property that, hey, I'm going to live here for 20, 30 years, they're more likely to go with an aggressive scenario where they're willing to pay more upfront in strata fee to not have the headache later. So ultimately, is it always a bad sign if a building doesn't have an updated depreciation report? It's not. Like I said, it's extremely common for strata corporations to vote against doing it every 3 years. I think it's pretty normal to see one done every 5 to 7 years, I would say. The original building I talked about that has never had a depreciation report, that to me is a little too risky, and so that to me is a red flag. But generally speaking, don't get turned away if you don't see an updated depreciation report. Just do more due diligence on the building itself, and do more due diligence again on the type of owner that's in there, because that's how you're going to understand how decision making is going to work with that building moving forward. So I hope you learned something in this video more extensively on depreciation reports and what they are essentially used for. If you're in the Vancouver area and you need any help with real estate yourself, you want to talk to me one-on-one, you can book me in the Calendly link below, or send me a text, shoot me an email, whatever's easy for you. And also, if you enjoy this video, if you learned something from it, if you could hit the like button and subscribe to this channel, What that does is it takes this video and it sends it out to more people so they can learn from it as well. But I want to thank you for taking the time to enjoy this video today, and I hope you have a wonderful day.